The objects in the exhibition have come from all over the place. I mean, pretty much all corners of the UK and further afield. I think it just sort of goes to show how sort of wide-reaching heavy metal is. Always wanted to have a physical exhibition, but we needed to persuade not only museums and funders and sponsors of what our vision was, and I think that by having a digital collection we could show what sort of objects would be there and who might be interested in it, and show the sort of diversity in terms of audience. And I think by having the digital archive and having these open days we were able to show just how far-reaching the project was. About 11 years ago we started Capsule, and over the 11 years that we've been putting on shows in the region, every band that we've had, whether they've been an electronic band or a folk band, have wanted to come and pay homage to Black Sabbath, and unfortunately there's been nothing for us to show them, nothing for us to take them to. In other words, there's been no tea towel for them to take home, other than there's an old empty carpet shop which was Mother's, which was a famous club. So we decided that we'd put a symposium together in 2007 at the New Art Gallery Walsall, and after that symposium, when we invited a number of key journalists, music journalists and visual artists to talk about the influence of heavy metal, we got a piece in the New Statesman which talked about the global impact of heavy metal and its economic reach, and that it was you know, similar to hip hop, and yet it still hadn't been celebrated in terms of where it had come from. So we started to look in museums and library archives, and we found that there was very little held around heavy metal, so we started to put our own collection together. And at the time we had a very minimal budget, so we tried to think of innovative ways that we could pull a collection together. And so we thought a digital archive would work, because then we wouldn't have to physically house a collection. And while putting a digital collection together, it meant that we could see what the objects might look like and what the stories that we should gather would be like, and also who might come along. Over the 4 years in the lead up to this exhibition, we set up a number of open days that were almost like Antiques Roadshow for metal fans, where we invited people to bring along their memorabilia. We recorded oral histories with them and digitised their objects, and it's really from those points, matched with a small team of researchers, that we were able to inform the exhibition that you'll see here today. We've got what we think is one of the first Black Sabbath flyers when they were called Earth, and that's kind of, although it doesn't look much, it's just a photocopied pieces of paper. To us it really sort of starts the story, and if you think about those humble beginnings to then at the end part of the exhibition where you've got figurines of Ozzy and other members of bands, I think that sort of shows how the genre sort of grew. So we start off with Black Sabbath because we sort of feel that they sort of define the sound, that heavy metal sound, that sort of amplified blues sound. And we've been working very closely with Tony Iommi. He's loaned us a number of costumes, he's amps, a guitar, and he's done a really great interview with us where he talks about how he himself had an industrial accident which meant that he lost the tops of his fingertips, which then led to him having to down-tune his guitar, which many people will say is what kind of created that heavy sound. We went out to LA and did an interview with Ozzy, and that features in the exhibition. Bill Ward's done us an amazing sort of sound piece that when you walk into the museum you'll hear, and that just talks about his sort of a lifelong relationship with the band. We've been working with Judas Priest. We've got a number of their stage costumes. The guys from Napalm Death have been amazing, you know, from early members to current members now. They've sort of dug out their old ticket stubs and fanzines and flyers, etc. So we really have worked with a number of the band members. And also key to the exhibition are the fans. So we've worked with a number of fans and we sort of showed their collections within the exhibition and their sort of relationship to the music. What you want, what you want. Well, I think it's really important to show what life was like in the 60s, and really for a young person what they could aspire to. And I suppose that for them music was a form of escapism, and even if you weren't in a band, I think working really hard, sort of 5-6 days a week, going out on a Saturday night listening to music was a form of escapism in the same way as it was for the bands who were actually playing the music. And I think that's what we're trying to show.
What you want? Come on. What you want? What you want? Come on. What you want?
With the latter part of the exhibition, we look at the late 80s, early 90s, and the DIY movement, sort of this idea of do-it-yourself, and really in complete contrast to being on stage and the sort of big theatrics of the sort of new wave of British heavy metal. If you look at the DIY scene, sort of with Napalm Death and bands around that time, it was very much that anyone could play an instrument, anyone could make a fanzine, and that the bands played on the floor, and so the audience were as much part of the process as the bands themselves. And I think that that's a really exciting part, to sort of show that in contrast to the kind of big rock and roll kind of big amps, big stage, big lights kind of thing. I really love all areas. I mean, we've been researching it for quite a long time, and I think for us what we've tried to show is the moments when the bands and their relationship to the region. So it's not the whole career of Black Sabbath, it's by no means the whole career of Judas Priest, but it's elements, and so what we're showing with the exhibition are the sort of ingredients that we think sort of made the sort of heavy metal sound and made it so influential globally. I think if you're interested in the region, if you have a sense of civic pride, we really sort of show the sort of social history of the region over the last 40 years, and I think that that's just as interesting as the music, and that's quite an important backdrop and scene setter for where the bands grew up and what influenced them. The exhibition at Birmingham Museum and Art Gallery opens on the 18th of June and runs throughout the summer right through to the 25th of September. And running alongside that, we've got a major exhibition of Mark Titchener, a contemporary artist who's got a solo show at New Art Gallery Walsall. We've got an exhibition at Wolverhampton Art Gallery of contemporary artists that make reference to motifs within heavy metal. So we've got academics coming from all over the world descending on the Black Country to kind of talk about the influence of heavy metal and particularly that sense of place. We also have a film programme running through that, and to encourage families to come along, we have a number of family activities which include a project with the Juno brothers, who make cardboard guitars that kids can play, and then when they strum them they sort of make their own sort of sound. So there's all sorts of things like that going on at the same time.